Hey, Shark, how you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing great for our second go at this.
Yeah.
I changed outfits. I decided this time, and you can't totally tell, but I have little pugs on my shirt.
Oh, nice. Well, I've got little sharks. This is a
That's,
quarantine shirt that I hadn't been washed in weeks, so goes
well,
along with my haircut.
I wanted to like go with the animal theme. I don't know if you saw, someone was advertising for our summit yesterday he works for Bear Hill Advisory. And so he was telling everyone that this was going to be better than Tiger King.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh
Good luck
great.
with that.
Now
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like I can't compete at that level. We're not feeding anyone to sharks, but anyways, so
Jessica Exotic is just not the name you're going for, so
no,
that's
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 probably
a
not it.
different channel. So,
All right. So as everyone knows from the earlier session with Chuck to kick off the day, this is our second go at it. Hopefully we'll sound as brilliant, maybe
yeah,
more so, or you'll sound brilliant and
completely
I'll sound
different
funny.
answers. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Um, but I do appreciate you doing this for me again.
Sure.
And I know I mentioned it on the earlier session, but for those of you who don't know Shark, Kenneth Kinney, he has a podcast, A Shark's Perspective, and it's been around for 200 and something episodes. What'd you
220.
say? 220. So a lot of episodes. He's had incredible guests, folks like Seth Godin, Jay Bayer, Guy Kawasaki, and then it's not always just marketing people. I mean, you bring in
No.
some other like adjacent topics that are really cool.
Yeah, I mean, my most important fun stuff is either talking about sharks or MMA or general leadership stuff. I mean,
Yep.
that's the kind of stuff that really gets me excited, but I'm a marketer at heart. So, I think to help a business grow, at least that the business growth is really more the function. I probably shouldn't label it that way, but no, I've been very lucky to know and work with some of those kind of folks, but I've touched on CX. I've touched on paid search and reputation management, pretty much anything that goes around building a brand. But a lot of it's been about personal brands as well. But I've had on a cancer survivor who speaks at different events, leadership events, because he's a two-time cancer survivor that climbed the 7 highest summits on all the continents. And then I've also had several people that were on Shark Tank and started a business and things like that. I mean, so I think luckily I'm able to bring a pretty wide breadth of experience because, as you get older, you start appreciating a lot more than just the single channel that so many people look at today. And I've worked in a lot of channels. I've worked as a consultant. I've worked for a publisher. I've worked for an agency. I've worked for a brand several times. And when you start thinking about that, it gives you a much better, clear look at the way the consumer sees you. Yeah. As opposed to just one silo that so many people live in for a pretty good chunk of their careers.
Yeah, one of your more recent episodes was it a psychotherapist or a psychologist?
Yeah, she's a licensed psychotherapist. Yeah, we were talking about anxiety, so it's the word that everybody talks about all day long during COVID, and she was on episode 6. And I knew I was going to start pivoting away from just, SEO, for example, when I started the show. But we talked about relationships and working better with people. I mean, that's as germane to a conversation about helping a business grow as anything else for anybody in any career, anywhere. And so I reached back out to her. She's a personal friend. She's been on VH1 and she's had a show on Sirius XM radio. And she's a licensed psychotherapist to a lot of well-known people as well. A lot of the rich people that we were complaining about on the show who, tell us that they're all in this together with us. But, it's my number 4 word that I've heard the most in the last couple of months. It's been coronavirus, COVID-19, a ventilator, anxiety. Anxiety is number 4, and unprecedented. It's climbing like a bullet, but unprecedented is number 5. But anxiety is something that affects everybody today, and having that kind of conversation, really goes towards performance because everybody's working from home these days. So understanding how to deal with it, and as somebody who's got ADHD and OCD and has had other issues and who swims with sharks in order to find my happy place legitimately and literally swims with them. That's, for me, being able to deal with fear in ways that other people cannot I thought it was important to have that kind of conversation on the show.
Well, and in marketing, if it's not about building relationships with clients and potential clients, and if it's not about understanding where they're at, which is anxiety is a huge piece of it, then I don't know what marketing and advertising is about.
Exactly.
Yeah. I actually, I sent you a meme, I don't know if it was last night or this morning, and it was about the commercials we're seeing. And I had actually had this moment thinking something very similar to the meme. And it's, 2 months ago, they were saying, hey, buy one of our cars. And now they're saying during these unprecedented and difficult times of, crisis and hard times, buy one of our cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's been every email message from companies, at least for the first month of COVID-19. It's, we care about you, we care about our employees, and then here's some worthless advice that you've already seen since you were, 2 on how to wash your hands as provided and described by the CDC. So apparently we didn't know how to do that, but, thank God my, pizza brand that I was on some weird loyalty program tells me they care, and then they recite that advice. And I know they're trying. They're all trying. It's their own way. It's just, again, I sort of bring up this example all the time. I think Abraham wrote the first one, and then it begot 50 other copies, and that begot 50 more copies, and so on and so forth. And so everybody's email sounds disingenuous, like they don't really care about you.
In the airline industry.
Oh my, yeah. It's like they've claimed that their planes are as clean as we remember. I'm somebody who wants to wear a hazmat suit as a germaphobe to get on a plane. And so when they tell me that their planes are as clean as I've always expected, I'm like, I don't know right now. And I've traveled a lot, but I've taken a pause, obviously, because of this. But I mean, you can wipe it down and it turns a different color. So I'm really curious to see if the planes we get on are blue and purple as opposed to the normal colors we're used to seeing before everybody started cleaning them.
Yeah. So since we've, briefly touched on a couple of the things that haven't come across to us the right way.
And this is why we're recording again. It was so good in the first part that we needed airline dirtiness and, COVID emails to jump out and to talk about. Exactly,
all over again. So should people just stop marketing?
No, not
now,
at all.
Just shut down.
It's an amazing opportunity. And I was very heartened. I read a survey this morning that people weren't necessarily turned off by ads. What this is really, I think, telling people is that they need to do a full, complete audit of their current marketing. I mean, if you're ever going to inject empathy into something and really sort of look at yourself in the mirror and reframe your marketing, this is the time to do it. Unfortunately, it just stands out when it takes people way too long to do it. When so many people are now jumping on the we care, if you will, bandwagon, it doesn't feel authentic when they're the 400th brand who put out a release about how they care, and the 400th brand say in their vertical or industry. And so you can't ever care too much and too early. It's just has to be authentic, and it shouldn't be last in the bunch. And now we're only talking about as a brand. Look, if you're the 1 millionth brand and you're doing something good to help fight what we're dealing with, I'm all for it. I'm not casting stones, judging anybody.
Right.
At the same time, if you're putting on a PR front, consumers see through the BS a lot better than they did before. And it's good that now that especially the folks that are in the business world and marketing call them out a little bit when it looks completely not authentic.
Yeah, contrived. It's interesting you said that, because when the airline emails came out and then the hotel one saying, hey, we're taking these hotels and donating them to people on the front lines and medical professionals. The first one I got, I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But what a great use of their unused capacity. But like you said, it's getting out there early, because then I got several more and I'm like, okay, got it.
Well, and a lot of the TV commercials, if you watch the news, I mean, I don't know that I've actually watched anything other than news and Netflix. You sort of need a balance of with some ads and no ads. But when you watch the ads today, they all look the same. And I used to produce a lot of those kinds of commercials, and now I'm saying how I wish I hadn't, but it's sort of that soft piano music, pictures of employees. It looks like stock photography a lot of times, employees that don't work for them, and then their logos at the back end. And yeah, I get it that you're, maybe you're helping finance a loan or something like that, but nobody's relating, a lot of the brands and what they do to where they haven't shown that they've cared in real life for a lot of years. And so I think the ones that have always been part of the, care messaging, they're doing a lot better and they're standing out, and you've seen it with them jumping in early to help as well. And the ones that haven't been authentic or are fumbling around trying to figure it out, it looks a little disingenuous. But again, at the same time, it's incredibly important. If they're doing anything, I'm going to think more positively about them than I did before. What I hope they won't do is, once they come out of this, stop marketing with, like it's their everyday again, because that's sort of what's turned a lot of people off about brands. You can't quickly adopt some fake care brand and then carry it through for the next 10 years, because we know they don't. But that's one part of the marketing that they really need to change. People really need to start looking at their messaging and aligning that a lot more closely. I think there's a problem right now with so many people being, distanced from each other, even on Zoom. And I was interviewing a guy for the podcast who actually talked about this. I mean, we're doing this on Zoom, and we've had some good friendly conversations. There are a lot of Zoom calls I've been on with several people that are still as awkward as sitting in a conference room. So, it's, even when you look at just making those kind of connections, I mean, we're able to leverage technology to really make some social connections, and you can do a lot more of that with your customers. But again, I think marketing has a remarkable opportunity to frame a lot of the messaging for brands a lot differently than they did before. They should invest a lot of time right now looking at their CRMs, because so many of the messages I get via email, for example, looks like they set it and forget it 2 months ago. I got 3 from the same brand yesterday who told me, you have a budget, we have a solution. And it just seemed completely tone deaf with another, 20% off offer. And I just read it and I think, and I look back through some of them. I've kept some of them that I just hadn't deleted yet. It's sort of fun now, if anything, but look at the crappy ones as a sport. But you sort of look, did they ever actually inject any kind of empathy in their conversation, or was it just direct response? And I equate it to, it's some of the same people that are making these decisions, or the same kind of folks that on LinkedIn are bombarding you with sales messages before they've even, gotten to first base with you. I'm the kind of gal that needs somebody to buy me dinner and take me to a movie, and then maybe I'll consider your product or service. But companies are jumping in, or people right now are jumping in. And I get it that a lot of people are scared, but all companies are, you got to keep the lights on and you got to keep your employees paid. And that is most important as well, just to survive. But, people that have gone through this, especially, almost 20 years ago when we went through 9/11, I think a lot of them get it, because there's a pace that you sort of learn. Smart money knows to be patient, to some degree. But a lot of the entrepreneurs, a lot of the people that are just driving too hard because there's fear in them, they just need to step, this too shall pass. I believe it as well. I'm seeing, too many good things about where the money's being injected into our economy. I've got to believe we'll have a new normal, but, this is an opportunity to reframe. Look, if you've had reputation problems for a lot of years, this is when you can reframe that whole conversation about bad things you were going through in your past as a brand.
Yeah, and then the new version will stick for a long time, assuming that you stay in alignment with that.
And that's assuming that they get their execution down correctly. Because if you're driving a lot of messaging and still able to sell products, just because your customer service team, your call center, is now home-based instead of sitting in an old mall somewhere, that doesn't mean that people necessarily are going to be more patient. I think people feel better or more understandable of what everybody's going through, which helps as a consumer, where I'm not yelling at every customer service person I get on the phone with. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit and wait, 20 minutes on hold because you've got limited resources. Otherwise, don't sell your product or service the same way if you can't fulfill that level of service that we come to expect. And we were already, I mean, that level of service is not going to take a step back right now either. So
yeah. No, I love what you said about kind of auditing the content that you have queued up to make sure that it isn't tone deaf or that it makes you seem like you've been living under a rock.
Exactly. Well, and I thought about the same thing because I live in an advertising world, especially with my company. But when I had several podcasts that I had already pre-recorded, and then the stuff really it seemed like it went like that in a manner of speaking. But I had several that were talking about advertising best practices, and then several that were talking about empathy, anxiety, customer experience, and things like that. Well, I moved, and there's somebody at the door, and then I moved everybody up. I mean, everybody up that was talking about the empathy experience and things like that, way ahead of advertising. You've got to really sort of take an audit of where your content is today, how you're delivering that, where your messaging is, and then really aligning it and then executing on it. And this is, again, the fundamentals of being a good business. This is not anything that's a tip or trick or hack. You know, the ones that have been executing well for years and care should be able to figure a lot of this out, you know, more cleanly.
Yeah, it may not be tips or tricks, but a lot of times the simple things aren't always as obvious to everyone. And for people who don't know and are thinking, oh, I'm going to stop everything, it's like, that's not the way either. And just because you mentioned 9/11, I'm not a Budweiser drinker, but I will never forget that commercial.
No,
and so when I hear Budweiser, I have an affinity for the brand, even though I don't particularly, consume their products that I'm aware of.
No, you go down the gas station and get your 40 and put it in a brown bag. And, I would agree. I know exactly the ad. I've actually watched it, but I mean, there are so many opportunities right now to refocus your brand and be able to tell that message. And, you could do it with podcasts. I mean, the stories of employees. I mean, if employee engagement's been a bad problem for years, I don't care what size company it's in. But if you want to get employees involved, believing in your brand a lot more today, it's really how you're reacting as a leader within a company and positioning yourself to consumers, taking care of your employees. People get it. We're all that part of the fight. We're all in together, and everybody gets it. It's just really how people are reacting to it right now.
It's interesting you said that, because I had a colleague / friend of mine who took the leap into corporate from smaller mid-sized companies and works at Verizon, and has had a fairly skeptical opinion of Verizon, even working there. I mean, good, bad, like any company. And I was talking to her last week, and she said, my perspective of leadership has changed because of the way they are communicating, talking, and caring about employees. Mm-hmm. And she is not someone who jumps on the drinking the Kool-Aid. And she was giving me examples of the mountains they're moving, and it was really cool. So I mean, just like you're saying about an employee experience, this is where you can really make an impression.
Yeah, and I would say that again, there are fumbles in this. As I can give you as many bad examples, unfortunately, as I can give you good. I know that another friend of mine who works at a Fortune 200 company, she was telling me that their CEO just recently sent out a memo that said something like, we're not looking at layoffs for this quarter. Well, of course, everybody sort of gets in a panic, because when you use that kind of messaging, it makes you think, okay, well, I better brush off my resume and start looking right now, because it may not be this quarter. It may be next, because what's happened with so many brands is they still don't understand the most important 5-letter word in the English language for marketing. It's trust. And if you're wanting a way to build that, now's the time to do it, and don't do anything that could erode that, because it really turns in from a small leak to just a gusher of water coming out on the back end if you don't look at yourself in the mirror right now with how you're doing that messaging to your employees, to your consumers, and to yourself.
So, we've talked about, some of the positive messaging that we've seen, and that we shouldn't stop the marketing. What kind of content should we put out there besides the thanking healthcare workers and all the people cleaning hospitals, et cetera?
Well, now I would say, let me back this up, because I don't also want to lump advertising in necessarily with marketing. I think of that as the sword for a marketer, if you will. But
Yep.
advertising, your advertising first, you've got to look at your budget, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one of the best opportunities to advertise right now, if you can afford it. If you cannot afford it, and you cannot afford, to be able to keep employees paid, just as a human, I want to see everybody get to work, get back to work, and stay there. That you can't put out a ton of messaging, but people have got to, they're doing this for a good reason. It's to help, their business grow, to recover from what they've gone through now. Right now, I wouldn't advertise a lot of typical offers that you see, the 20% off or the $19.95 or those sort of dollar offers, without really explaining what's the value to me. Your general messaging, which worked, it was financially manageable for you to get 2% on a display ad. That's a ridiculous amount of spend today.
Yeah.
You've got to put it in more context to where it shows the value. Look, my hard-earned dollar is, we're in a place where you don't know if you'll have that dollar tomorrow. Yeah. So you better explain in all forms of content and advertising, what value your product or service brings to people. Just leading with features and benefits was a bad thing before. It's really bad now. And when you position anything you're doing, it's got to show me, where is it going to fit in to help me today? Not, here's $100 off or 20% off or whatever that is. That means absolutely nothing to me right now if I can't figure out how to fix my problem, which again should be the goal for every brand, to help people figure out how to fix the problem for them, not themselves. Not to get more. The goal is not to get more sales to the customer. They don't care about your sales revenue at all. They want to know, if I'm going to give you $1 in exchange, it better have something for value. But I would say that some of the brand awareness that you're looking at, obviously, show, like we were talking about before, that kind of messaging needs to be sort of softer sell, show, the stories of your employees, how you're helping participate, produce masks or anything like that. Maybe donating to hospitals, something. If you're a small business owner that owns a restaurant, if you don't have a gift card with some sort of program encouraging your customers not to give you money and buy gift cards, I don't like those at all. I know some of the larger chains that are doing that. That doesn't give me value. But if you show me a way that if I buy a gift card from a local pizza shop, and I can donate that to a policeman or a fireman or woman, a nurse, somebody that's in the fight. Somebody that's working at a grocery store. These people that are on the front lines, people driving the trucks, the logistics folks of the world that are keeping us going. I much rather would see somebody create that kind of brand messaging and offer, if you will. I'm 100% going to give you $20 to get a gift card to donate to a nurse who's working their tail off 20 hours a day just to keep, sick people alive or give them comfort in their last days. That's a great opportunity to really build some social presence as well. Showing how you support maybe a local charity, for example. Right now, there's not enough of that. The food banks are dying. That kind of thing can be done extremely well right now. But right now, I would also say, if you're going to invest anywhere, I would dial back on some of the messaging and selling that we do on social. Social's an area where it's going to also cause a lot of, if you are tone deaf, it's going to cause a lot of problems, and you're going to see a lot of negative things that, amplified that wasn't already there. Odds are you're going to get negative comments on any ads on social, but they still work and they convert. But to show that you're not tone deaf and all it's done is, elicit bad remarks, is to really look at paid search. Paid search, we know that's where the bulk of the journey at least starts. Google, GA would love to tell you that that's where it ends as well. But if you know that somebody is looking for a product or service in your vertical, you want to be front and center and invest in search right now, because people are sitting down at their Google machines and they're typing in, I'm looking for a, company that provides this product or service, and maybe they're just doing it on brand, and that's the same thing goes. But if you're looking for, say, any kind of home care service, that's something that's a necessity right now. And pet food. If people are looking for pet food deliveries, look at changing that message too as well in updating your paid search terms to where you deliver. That's something that not enough. I've been doing sort of audits of brands that I've worked with to see if they're doing that. We used to look at look for a pizza shop near me. Now you're sometimes looking at pizza shop near me that delivers.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are little, tricks to get more traffic driven as well, because that's where people are looking for some kind of option to be able to buy and interact with you now.
Well, and to be found more easily by the people that, yeah.
Yeah, because if somebody's if they've got $100 in their wallet and they're gonna spend it somewhere, and they go to the Google machine to start looking for, something on product or service, they're committed to buying something and they're doing some research now. So, look at that as part of your journey. That's going to give you and you can look at the timeline, because not everything's just a quick buy. It could be that it's part of still a 6-month journey, like if you're investing in college, but people have nothing to do right now other than sit at home and work and be social with their families and whatnot. But if they're doing research, you want to be front and center where they're doing research. And it just, that kind of messaging, right, and how you align it can really drive a tremendous impact.
That's a great point about paid search. The thought would not have crossed my mind, but
no. Well, it becomes daunting to a lot of people who don't spend a lot of money there, but maybe think, and this is not encouraging you to go all digital either. There are different ways of, moving your money around, especially during a pandemic like this. You're not going to invest a lot in billboards right now. Billboards, I've loved working with billboards right now, but if I'm going to move my money somewhere, and I can, it's not going to be something that's out somewhere. You're not putting out those graphics if you're a local business on a billboard anywhere near you, because there's 5% of the traffic that they used to have.
Yeah.
But if you're building part of that journey right now, the quickest, easiest way to do that, other than TV inventory, which is also a lot cheaper than it used to be. You can buy ads a lot more cheaply than you could. But advertising is also taking a hit. You can be front and center in all forms of digital advertising now. The auction's not where it used to be. And you've also got to remember too, that a lot of people unfortunately are falling out of the auction in Google. There are companies that are going away. So there are a lot of times when maybe you thought a non-branded term, not the best example, but I give you one for, like, say, auto insurance. You don't have a lot of necessarily local mom and pop shops other than independent agents, for example, who might be bidding on auto insurance near you. Well, they may not be able to afford to keep the doors open. So somebody else, and again, a better example would be, pizza shop, for example, than auto insurance. But that term is going to cost less in most cases, depending on the vertical, but in most cases, there are things like that. You've also really got to look at your seasonality too. And I've worked for and worked with a lot of brands who are seasonal. You still only have certain opportunities right now during certain seasons. For example, if we just passed Easter, Paz, the Easter egg coloring company, they only have so many opportunities to advertise through the year when anybody cares. And so when you look at that, there's no reason why they should have dialed it way back, because people were still running to Walmart a few weeks ago to buy stuff like that, to do Easter egg hunts in their own lawn, and toilet paper, which they were trying to hoard. So anywhere that you can look at the seasonality, if it has a more immediate impact on you, it's still a good opportunity to advertise now.
So I'm glad you covered advertising. If we come back to kind of marketing in general, are there types of content that you would suggest focusing on more of?
Well, I would do an audit and focus of your entire website, because that content that lives on there, where you're delivering them to, needs to be updated. Your e-commerce pages, things like that. Your career section needs to be updated. If you look at a career section or an inventory, and this comes up all the time in e-commerce, when you go to add something to your cart, and I went through this myself when we tried to add some stuff, or my wife did when we were doing some stuff to get at Walmart. And I'll give you an example, you ask for toilet paper, it says it has it, you pay for it, you go there, it might be in your basket, but it's not in their store, and they didn't update their cart. So little things like that Walmart can kind of get away with it, but smaller companies cannot. So if you have an e-commerce channel, update your inventory, update the content that reflects where you are, where there are delays, things like that. I mean, this is sort of necessity stuff that you absolutely have to do. And then if you are using any kind of email system, go back, I mentioned this earlier, but go back and look at the messaging you're sending out. That should be your first party data list that you've worked with and built for years. That absolutely, you don't blow that intimate level of conversation that you have with people in an email, but you can really turn somebody off to an unsubscribe really quickly with being tone deaf today.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the e-commerce, because the thing I noticed about like Amazon Prime and several grocery stores is you fill your whole cart, and then when you go to check out, they're like, oh, we don't have any spots open ever. It's like, couldn't you've told me that beforehand?
Well, exactly. And we picked up some stuff from Walmart, and I think we put in toilet paper and paper towels and fruit and vegetables, all that kind of stuff. Every bit of the food they had, no problem with that. Everything that you really need that you hear about, people hoarding, like it's the zombie apocalypse, it wasn't there and you didn't find out until you got there, or until the email said at the very end that your order's ready, but this stuff wasn't there. Well, they credit your account back, but you got to wait a week. And so to even get the stuff right now, because, so many people are buying with curbside pickup. So just thinking about it that way, little things you could do. And again, there's only one Walmart and one Amazon, but updating that kind of stuff in your e-commerce cart, which a lot of people have today. And that's, for many people, it's the only method they have to sell anything, but really being front and center, with doing that. The one other thing I will add, and I didn't mention earlier, is every bit of your messaging and all the marketing you do, make it authentic. I mean, we kind of joked about the emails being horrible. Mm-hmm. We get it. You don't have to hashtag we're all in this together. We get it. That all that just sounds phony and blah. And I'm somebody that doesn't generally have a filter, although I'm proud of myself for not cursing on here, which I normally do. But the authentic me writes, I think 1,000 times better than every BS email I've gotten from a brand telling me that they care ish. So,
well, so right when, it all first happened, I was canceling a flight like a zillion other people. And I waited on hold for, I think, 4.5 hours. But the whole time I'm like, Jessica, if the person who helps you is stressed out or frustrated or short-tempered, just lots of grace. Well, it turns out they were awesome. Got through the call. Well, then I get a confirmation of my flight and I'm like, oh no, it's not, it's probably not canceled. And I'm like, I can't deal with this today. So I waited a few days, but then Delta sent out the email, which was really smart. I mean, problem solving at its finest. And it was, hey, if you have a flight during these time periods, if you miss the flight, it will be credited to your account. You don't even need to call us. What a smart way to solve an internal capacity problem and a customer side frustration right there. I mean, you eliminated so much work.
Oh, we agreed. And what they're doing, at least with airlines and hotel chains as well. I had to cancel quite a few as a speaker. Somebody's traveling all over the world to speak at conferences and events. I had to cancel a lot of events like everybody else, March, April time period. I had just gotten back from one international deal and then everything sort of hit the fan. At that time, I probably waited about a week before I was supposed to leave for another conference. And then everything got shut down. What I noticed, though, was the level of empathy in the voices of the people on the other line. It was so much different. They not seemed more humble, but a lot of times, airlines haven't had to be pushed before. They haven't needed to. And really, it just sort of got down to the human level. These people are going through the same thing that we all are. So if anything, it taught everybody a little humility, a little bit of empathy. And I was so, I had so much of a better experience with American and somewhat to some degree with Delta. I started seeing some of the messaging better. Now, American also destroyed my bag a second time after destroying a previous bag, and they're being cheap about how they reimbursed me. That call didn't go quite as well, but the ability that they're able to dial back, they want to keep me as a long-term play. That should matter. And instead of just, cutting bait, and I feel for them because those same people I talk to, those people probably aren't working there today, or maybe they've gotten furloughed like, employees all over the country. Hotel chains have been just getting brutalized. Could not have been nicer. Now, what I do hope to see coming out of this for all brands, and I think people really have to look if they have any kind of loyalty program, is everything you have that expired should not expire, but it should not even have an end date on it. This is just personally my thoughts. Of those loyalty points, is it your loyalty to me or my loyalty to you? Because my loyalty to you, you better not put an expiration date on it, because I will be more than happy to go to any other option I have, whether it's a pizza shop or an airline. There are connecting flights. I've paid more because I didn't like the cheaper version because they didn't treat me well. That's why you pay for premium services most of the time. So little things like that, these are the expectation level that we have set as customers for the last 100 years, and you've been telling us you care. So now's the time to really position yourself and show it going forward, as opposed to dialing back. I want to have this same conversation. I want to see every one of these ads and positive stories. Let's point out every one of them that decided to dial back because they just thought they were giving us too much, when it was the stuff we already expected anyway. That's the part that really bothers me about not being authentic, is if you had really listened to everybody complaining, this was the stuff that would have eliminated all those calls. Now you're finally acting that way. You want to dial it back, it's going to be an issue for me as a customer.
Yeah, when you mentioned authentic, I just thought of one of the brands that I love, and Zappos. And talk about being authentic to their brand. When they came out with, they will provide customer service for anything.
Yeah.
It surprised me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, it shouldn't surprise me at all. That is who Zappos has always been. I mean,
exactly.
The legendary stories of people calling and them delivering pizza. I mean, that's probably a decade old. And now they're just saying, hey, we know you're in this time of probably needing service and not able to get it some places. If you want to know the top 10 shows on Netflix, call us. And so it's levering what they're already known for, but inviting people to, without having to buy anything, get connection with people, and just so many layers of it. But it's so in line with their brand that when I saw it, I had, positive thoughts about it, as opposed to like, seriously.
Well, and that brings up one other thing that you mentioned. I mentioned call centers and teams being distanced from each other. Zappos, I love the fact that they're dialed into looking at Netflix and being able to answer questions like that. But there's not a big sheet necessarily that they're following. It's probably just the normal stuff that everybody is watching, Tiger King. Or something like that.
But probably the answer to everything.
Yeah, but if you work for a company right now, even small businesses have call centers that are distance, and this has always been an issue. Even with the ones that I managed a team for example, that was overseas, I tried to have as many conversations with them daily because I wanted to, or as many conversations in the week, and I would try to have one every business day, because you've got to have those people connected, and that doesn't matter if they're overseas or if they're in Des Moines, Iowa. If they're somewhere here and they're able to connect to you as a chain link for your customer, they need to understand what your messaging is as well. That's a basic part of sales enablement, but so many people miss it on a regular basis. It's especially important right now. If you change your offer and pivot it to the 20% off, or maybe it's 50% off or something crazy. It's Crazy Eddie's sale this weekend. If you're doing that, you've got to work even harder to make certain and let people know. People are getting a little more, they're trying to grab sales and revenue wherever they can. That means that they're going to do a little more of a buckshot approach, which I get. But if you're doing a different offer on an affiliate channel, the consumer doesn't care. They only see your logo. They don't care about the sausage making process getting there. So make certain that you double, triple, quadruple connect with your call center or sales team so that you're selling and, preaching one message to the masses.
That is hugely important. And I think it's super easy to forget that is not necessarily content in the traditional form, but it's communication, and all of it has to be aligned across your brand, advertising, marketing, internal, external,
Yeah.
the voicemail messages that employees have on their phone line.
Yeah, well, it really, we another buzzword that we hear all the time is essential. I mean, it really just helps you figure out what's essential, and what's essential to your customer has always been breaking down all the silos and executing. Now, you're going to be judged extremely hard right now as to how you can or cannot do that. Look, and if you can't fulfill something as a consumer, I'm okay with that. Amazon preached loud and fairly early, that they were not going to be able to deliver the essentials. Yeah. This is the most, from a customer experience, I mean, they are at the top because they've got a good frictionless channel for the most part that allows you to go in a couple of clicks and you get anything delivered to your door, even during a pandemic. But they said they couldn't deliver this on 2 days, like on normal Prime, and they did a good job. And you didn't hear people screaming left and right around. I mean, all it did is it makes you think a little less of Prime Day right now than you would have before. But I mean, they were loud and early on that, and a lot of people have not been. And I mean, it's something that I applaud them, and I don't like to applaud, trillionaire companies, but they've done a great job. One other thing I'll say though, and I use that word, is companies really need to look at, especially with their website and their UX design, but make it as frictionless as possible. But this is going to be another thing where we need to contact customer service more than we used to. Don't hide the freaking number buried layer upon layer upon layer. I mean, you want to draw my ire, and I've listened to a lot of those calls from customers who get mad when they get transferred down 4 rabbit holes to get to somebody who wasn't the right person, and then they got to transfer you back, and then the line cuts off. I mean, that right now, your temperament has changed if you're not able to execute on a phone call and have a conversation with people. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, I went through something similar where I couldn't find the phone number, and it did not make me happy. They just sent me a note saying someone's requested to change the email address on your account.
Oh wow.
And I got that right after I'd gotten my credit card company saying,
But they care. Fraud. They care about you, their customer, and their employees, and then here's how to wash your hands.
I found their phone number since they were a public company, but it took a while. But so you had mentioned, how to maybe dial back from social some for advertising, and probably dial back from billboards. Is there anything else in terms of channels that you would say consider doing it differently?
Well, and I say dial back with social. You can still do just as many ads, if not more, because that's where everybody's operating. But that's the kind of ad where you could show the stories of your company, your employees, and everybody else, and where they are in the hunt to help promote. You can very easily take that story, make it clickable, find out more, and it take you to a landing page instead of saying, here's our offer, $19.95, click here, you're going to fill out a form, somebody will call you, or here's your e-commerce channel to buy it. You can draw me in with a lot different messaging now, and I say me, you can draw in customers right now with a much softer message that really should be about the core of who your brand is. I mean, if you're a grocery store, I don't really care right now. I don't care as much, or what I hear from people. I use I way too much in this description, but people don't care as much that you've got pork and beans for 25 cents. They want to see the guy or girl who's stocking that shelf, who's unfortunately just got a mask a week ago, things like that. I mean, they want to see those stories about how those people in logistics are keeping the world going. You don't want to see an ad from, an attorney. I don't want to see those kind of ads. Those are really the only kind of ads I don't want to see. But every other ad, I'm okay with personally as a consumer. And then advice I would give to a company is you can take those same amount of ads to drive traffic and just do it with a different kind of message. That, if it's at your core, you can measure it as well, but that's where people are going to react. And look, you can A/B test anything. If you want to put out, a test and see, does the $19.95 work? Absolutely test it. But if you did it on social, for example, you're going to get a lot of nasty remarks and nasty reviews from people who hate that kind of messaging. They're not going to hate the stories of real people like you and me and what we're going through in this fight, because that's where we're all in it together, not where your brand sells pork. Again, pork and beans apparently is the topic, the example of the day. 25 cents. I want to know, is Kroger or Winn-Dixie or, Publix or any of those, Safeway, are they doing something to help this fight with shelves? Or do they have the products and services I need so I can fix the problem of not being able to get Clorox wipes, hand sanitizer, and toilet paper? I mean, and then show me Johnny or Susie who's helping, put those items on the shelves. I mean, those are things that people care about today.
I eat that stuff up, and I think a lot of people do. There was the grocery store, I think in Canada, where they've preloaded up carts with essentials for the senior hour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and not only is it heartwarming, and I love it for that reason, but it also gets my mind thinking like, okay, people are being really proactive, innovative, thinking about what their customer is going to need. And there was a restaurant chain, I think in Florida, that had to lay off their hourly staff. They closed 3 of their 5 restaurants. So they kept their salary staff to kind of core run these few restaurants. They decided, and then they started noticing they were getting massive tips from people that were ordering from them. They decided to take all the tips and use it for the hourly employees that they had to lay off.
Well, and you also have to think a little bit about where we are today, which is survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And with a grain of salt, everybody gets it when you see these ads all the time. But you're also thinking, where are people going to come out of this and have a positive feeling about your brand? Because there was a restaurant example where I just saw on a news channel where somewhere, I believe in like Tybee Island in Georgia, where they took the dollar bills that had been stapled on the walls everywhere, and now the lady is using that money to help pay for her employees that she cares about. If I'm there, I'm going to find that freaking restaurant and go there just to help support them. And these are, it's those kind of stories, if done correctly.
Yeah.
To me, it's as powerful as a little bit different, the reason, but it's like companies like St. Jude. I mean, those stories behind it, that's how they are such a remarkable hospital. They do direct response marketing extremely well, but they just do it in a different, more powerful way. That means you want to give money to them over and over and over again. And that's not a perfect, comparison by any stretch, but it's just one way to build brand affinity in a way from a direct response and brand level that most people aren't really thinking about. Most of the creatives that I talk to tell you've got to dial back all your advertising everywhere. No, you just got to be smarter about the way you're doing it, at least in my opinion. And again, A/B test it. If it doesn't work, pull it. But that's, let data drive that decision. But I do think you have the opportunity right now to test a little more heart and empathy than you did before.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you 2 more questions.
Okay.
We could talk for probably 20 hours, but I know you don't have all the time in the world. So I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. And then the next session is about cybersecurity communications.
Love it.
Talk about a way to get some really bad PR is if you handle a cybersecurity issue poorly. Then that's where all your marketing and advertising is going to do, is to try and explain that away.
Exactly. I used to work in big data. We would freak out about the possibility of somebody hacking on a good day, let alone now. Can you imagine the implications?
I'm sure the hackers
are.
So first question, because I think we've talked in the past that you would be on Shark Tank if they twisted your arm. Favorite shark?
Yeah, all of them, but right now I will tell you in particular Mark Cuban, what he's doing to give advice. And I'm so proud of so many of them, but he's been on every channel everywhere. Now he's, granted he's a billionaire and he's a well-known name, but he really seems to be dialed into the problems we're having today. He said he owns like 200 businesses. I'm friends with somebody that he owns one of his businesses, and the way that he's dialed in to trying to help support the president, his politics are completely contrary to Donald Trump's, but he is offering to do whatever the president needs him to do. And he gets it. I think he gets it at the core. That's what makes him a popular one. But ask me any other day, and I might tell you Barbara Corcoran, because of what she's done just as a woman in New York, married to this like horrible guy and she's done it in real estate in New York. She is just a killer and extremely, extremely smart. I've met and seen Damon John speak a couple times. I mean, he's one of the best speakers I've ever seen in my life. And you know, they're all great. I mean, you just seeing that kind of show right now just amazes me how much we all sort of need to see entrepreneurs grow. I'm curious though. I don't know if they'll be high-fiving or handshaking after the next deal. They might give them $100,000 for 10%, but they're probably not going to give them a hug. You know?
Yeah, probably not. But it's interesting you said Barbara Corcoran, because, you know, having probably fought as hard as she had to get where she is, she still comes across as a very kind, genuine, warm human. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think I could have kept that intact, which is why I'm not her. But so the other question, and this is a completely unfair question, but I don't care.
Okay.
If you could only have one of these for the rest of your life, the movie Jaws or Shark Week?
Well, Shark Week, because it's, you know, 7 days of content. So, I mean. Okay.
I mean, I wondered if you were just going to kind of let go of like the original quality.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Abraham of shark movies, if you will, but.
You're going to turn your back on it.
Yeah, there's so Shark Week does play off of the things that scare people about sharks. Everybody thinks there's some killing machine with some of their advertising, the same way as Jaws did. I mean, Jaws is not a very good, I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's a phenomenal movie. Yeah. The way that, you know, the special effects leave a little be desired considering the age of the film.
Yeah.
And the later other releases of Jaws, like the one that chased Michael Caine from one coast to the other, which was ridiculous, that was horrible. But Spielberg did a brilliant job of creating a movie and the suspense and all those kind of things. I mean, this is stuff that like gets at people's core. What Shark Week does is some of that, but much less limited. It just does a better job of helping people understand how beautiful the sharks are, really that they're not. And again, this is probably about 60-70% of their content is showing that they're not monsters, how they're being hunted. But they are, you know, in most waters, the apex predator anywhere you go, but they're not out looking to chew and eat everybody. I swim with them a lot. If you're a diver, you know, you're going to see that a lot. I just got back from the Caribbean about a month ago and was surrounded by 50 or so 7 to 10 foot Caribbean reef sharks. And none of them, you know, ever put me in a position where I was anxious or nervous. For me, that's kind of a Zen, you know, moment. But for a lot of people, it's their, you know, morbid fear. In Shark Week, to answer your question, I don't get up for like an entire week.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I don't watch Shark Week, but my vivid memory of Jaws is about 25 years ago. My sister was going away to college, and she found out that one of the first like freshman orientations is you could watch Jaws floating in one of the pools on campus.
Oh yeah.
And I just remember being like, and she was 5 years older than me, and I'm like, I mean, that just sounded like the scariest thing in the whole world.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Shark Weekend, Shark Discovery Channel did a Shark Weekend 2 weeks ago, which was absolutely brilliant because they know everybody loves that content.
Yep.
And they put on just hours and hours of shows over a weekend. And one of the guys that was host of one of the shows I knew, but I mean, I was, you know, if I'm going to be locked in for a pandemic and not want to watch anymore, I mean, I can only watch Netflix for so long. I've seen every show ever on there. It was time to switch to something. This was a good switch.
Yeah. So I said 2 questions. One for real, last one. Write a book? Not write a book. Is it on your bucket list? Not on your bucket list.
It's sitting on top of the bucket right now. I'm getting close to getting it finished, and a lot of it's focused on care. I have a date in May, when it will be, at least first draft will be completed.
Yeah.
My editor's ready to go. You might even get a copy of it to read before. So
wow, soon.
It's coming soon. Yeah. Well, I already had some things pivot. The packaging came to me a few weeks ago, and I'm elated as to where it's going, but it's really talking about a lot of examples we talked about today and just being able to change where businesses are going to go. Now, it's also going to highlight a lot of the things that have shown where we don't care. I mean, we spend a lot of time complaining about things that where companies seem tone deaf. Again, I'm going to add a chapter specifically to all the amazing responses that have been out there to fight COVID. I mean, again, if you're doing something, that's wonderful. There's not a measure of one doing better something versus another. If you're doing anything, wonderful. Just don't say you're doing something and not, or be, not authentic about it for years and do the wrong thing. It's got to be at your core, your DNA of who you are as a company. But that's one chapter of those positive messages, and then a lot of things that we just need to fix. And I've worked for so many brands, and I've seen some of this on my own. I've consulted with Fortune 200 that I'm constantly shocked how they look at data incorrectly and take that for granted. I mean, just their CRMs and their email campaigns and some of that messaging touch points. It's a lot of sort of what we talked about today, just in a less ADHD, more focused book.
Yeah. Oh, this is exciting. It's coming up quickly, at least the first draft. If it was
I'm going to wait until Amazon can at least deliver it to somebody, though.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
I've got several friends who just put out books this last couple of months, and I'm sure they would love that crystal ball back.
Yeah, seriously. I so appreciate you doing this with me again, being such a good sport and generous with your time.
Absolutely.
Just to let folks know, while you are at home in quarantine, if you aren't already listening to a Shark's Perspective podcast, cue it up. I mean, it's on all the podcast apps. You can find it everywhere. Yeah. Also, website by the same name, A Shark's Perspective.
Yeah,
anywhere else?
sharksperspective.com. And that's the best place to find where I am on, LinkedIn, or, some diving trip pics occasionally on Instagram. I don't take tech in the water much. But it's the best way to connect with me on LinkedIn or read my random ridiculous thoughts on Twitter. But sharksperspective.com, and that kind of gives me a different place. I live day to day at AI Media Group, which is the company I work for. But the podcasting personality of me and the shark personality of me lives separately on sharksperspective.com.
Yeah. So check it out, folks. It is a solid podcast, and I only listen to 2 podcasts now. I think I've before, nice. Vanished, where people literally disappear, is the only other one. The time flies by, so listen to it, check it out. I vouch for this guy. Not only is he solid in marketing, but just a good business brain to follow. That. Oh, I sincerely mean it, and I am so happy that we've met. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Enjoy your Friday and your weekend. And I have no doubt we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Appreciate being part of the conference. It's an honor.
Yeah.